Hey all, your OS reviews. In this video, we're taking a hands-on first look at the JIYUAIRING. That name is a bit of a mouthful, but rant aside on naming, it does have a couple of interesting features. For example, it has 2 times longer battery life than what I've typically seen on these smart rings, which have already touted roughly 1 week of use before you have to recharge it again because there isn't a screen and all the sensors here are consuming a little less power. But this one actually gets around 2 weeks or 14 days before you have to recharge it again, which is kind of insane. They claim it's because of a more energy efficient processor, processing algorithm, and slightly larger battery inside, and even comes with its own self-charging or power bank enabled case for some extra top-ups when on the road. And also, unlike the Aura Ring, this one has no subscription fees to use the companion app. It's completely free, included for both iOS or Android devices. And then last but not least, the final feature here that's a bit more unique is they tout some more kind of AI large language model integration in the companion app. So you're able to prompt it with more specific questions like, how can I improve my sleep? If I'm feeling unwell, what should I do? Should I rest today? Things like that, having more of a natural conversation, which is a feature that might be missing on the software app of many of the previous fitness trackers and rings we've seen. Even though this category of smart rings, we've already seen some competitors from brands like Ringcon, for example, come out with their first and second gen models, also with the charging case, as well as the aforementioned Aura as being one of the OGs, and Ultra Human as well have been quite popular, not to mention larger players like Amazfit, Samsung's Galaxy Ring, as well as Huawei have all released alternatives as well. Miniaturizing some of the sensors like heart rate monitoring, sleep tracking, step counting into a smaller form that might be more non-intrusive, and also giving you, again, longer battery life compared to an Apple Watch or Android Wear watch that you may have to charge every other day. That being said, of course, functionality is also going to be more limited as well. There is no screen on this particular unit, so you can't really tell the time or see notification status. So more like a fitness tracker or activity tracker in a more lightweight form. As for top-line specs, it's still very lightweight at only around 2.4 grams, crafted out of titanium alloy and ceramic fusion materials, coming in standard ring sizes and then connecting to the phone via Bluetooth. Also, the ring itself is rated to be IP68, so it's going to be water resistant. If you're washing your hands or taking a shower, it will still survive. But if you're submerging it in deeper waters, like you're going diving, it's still recommended to take off the ring. Granted, it would have been even better to see 5 ATM, but it is what it is. Now, in terms of color, though, this particular model, the AI ring, only comes in black at the moment. So there are no other gold or silver colorways like we've seen previously from other players, and also from this brand themselves. This is kind of their 3rd generation ring. Again, past versions with a few more color options and even a slightly different design for the charging case on Gen 1, which was this kind of acrylic transparent case, slightly reminiscent of the Nothing phone. But again, this time around, even compared to their previous 2 Gen models, this one has, again, 2 times longer battery life, a slightly different finish and design. Packaging here does look quite clean, and it folds open with a magnetic lock, and we have the actual smart ring, which is inside of a, again, battery case of its own. They call this a UFO inspired design because there is kind of a swiveling door that you can use to hide the ring when not in use, and then pop it over again to reveal the ring. Kind of clever and a little bit more, I guess, fancy looking and feeling from a hardware point of view than many of the past smart rings and charging docks we've seen. The perimeter of the ring here is also crafted out of aluminum alloy, having a nice density to it, and you get this kind of crazy holographic shimmering effect on the rear as well. So showing a little bit more attention to detail on the battery case compartment that we'll take a closer look at here in a moment. Also, there's a lanyard strap on the top. Some other accessories that you get here include a standard USB Type-C charging cable for the battery case, as well as a quick user guide that also includes a QR code for downloading the companion app. And this model also has the tagline Master of Sleep Management labeled there on the box as well. Some of those specs just reiterated again on the rear. Now a closer look at that battery case. Here are the dimensions next to the Ringcon as part of that swiveling mechanism, which I do really like. That being said, I guess from the perspective of functionality, this one, because it has more of that kind of donut-like shape on the top, a mini handle, or even feeling like a small purse, it doesn't actually fill up the space, of course, with the battery. So some trade-offs there for the aesthetics. Otherwise, the actual capacity of the charging case is around 300 milliamp hours, which means with extra top-ups from the case, the entire package here can actually last around 2 to 3 months before you have to recharge the entire thing again, which is crazy. So if you're going on a longer trip, you don't have to bring an extra power bank, for example. You can be away from an outlet and it will still work. So the battery case is one advantage compared to other designs like the Aura Ultrahuman rings, which are missing the battery charging feature at this point in time. You have to still top it up using an external power bank or charger of your own. Anyways, the dock here just basically pops in magnetically, stays in place pretty securely like on wireless headphones. And taking a closer look at the design of the ring here next, we can see it is a completely flat shape in this kind of onyx black colorway, very smooth and glossy, quite mysterious looking. Might be a little bit more of a fingerprint magnet, but overall I like the way it looks. There's also a slight logo here imprinted that tells you the direction that's facing up to better orient it when you're wearing for the sensors to be in the correct position. And if we zoom in here a little bit more, you can also see the logo there imprinted, as well as the size of the ring. This one here is a size 10 also being shown. And we can also see inside of the ceramic acrylic, the tiny sensors which are suspended there in the resin. There should be a red and green light for tracking your heart rate, as well as SpO2, as well as the magnetic charging contact there as well. And we can also see that the inside of the ring is completely round, so it's very smooth feeling compared to having more of a indent there on the side for the charging contacts, having a flat side as well as some divots that add a bit more resistance. And then the Ultrahuman Ring Air in the middle has a brushed titanium finish instead, in this particular instance having more of that metal pattern versus the more smooth ceramic finish on this one. But again, a slight difference would be that these two are a bit more matte in terms of their texture, more of like a powdered finish compared to the shinier finish on this one. Looking pretty cool and stylish in my opinion, so not bad in terms of the design. And like the others, the ring can be worn on both your left or right hand based on your preferences. You can use it on your index finger or on your thumb. You can kind of position it a little bit more flexibly based on whatever is most comfortable. So yeah, the hardware here does seem to be pretty impressive, but as you guys can tell by our title, this is a hands-on first look and not our full review. The reason is because this unit is a pre-production prototype version. Some aspects of the hardware are still being refined, and so hopefully once all of the software aspects are fully finished and polished, we'll be able to come out with a more in-depth review about the performance. Because right now there are some issues that I have to point out. Again, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, just keep in mind that this is again a pre-production model at the moment, so not finalized. But the biggest problem right now is I'm actually unable to connect it successfully to the companion app, which might be because the ring itself hasn't been updated to support their app yet. Because if we tap to add here, it tells us to first place the ring inside of the battery case, and afterwards tap to add a device. We can also see that the battery case itself does indeed have power. This little arrow icon, by the way, is a battery indicator, which actually lights up green here momentarily when we pop in the ring, as well as when we charge the battery case using USB Type-C, that light there will also start to flash. So this tells us there is sufficient power inside of the battery case, but very interestingly, there is no LED light that illuminates on the ring itself, telling us that it's being charged or turned on. It's actually kind of in this off state, so I'm assuming that the hardware here isn't fully finished yet, because there's kind of no signs of life when we pop it in, or somehow we need to reactivate the battery. But that is definitely a little bit of a concerning sign, just because again on the smart rings all of the components are weather sealed and they're all just built in. There's no way to manually replace the tiny little battery inside, of course. So eventually once these components fail, it becomes more of a disposable at that point. Maybe even more so than a smartwatch, because on that at least you can probably pry open the back using some screwdrivers or adhesives, versus this is all completely soldered in. So that is always a risk, but with some of the larger players, like Ultrahuman for example, they have been quite good in terms of support. So if your battery life is getting shorter, they will often offer a replacement, so using it for at least a few years shouldn't be problematic. But again, that is one of the risks, I guess, of having a integrated design. So since there are no signs of life on the ring itself, there are no lights being turned on, as indicated by the user manual here, the ring light is not turning on when charging, which should probably look something like this as shown in their adverts here on the page, as well as in this particular demonstration. But again, we aren't seeing that light, even though again the battery case here is full. I've been charging it actually overnight, and also I've ensured that the contacts here are clean, securely locked in, because it is being recognized when we pop it in here initially. It's just there's no other signs. kind of disappears after a couple of seconds. So it comes as no surprise that as a result, it's unable to be found when we pop in the case, take it out as well. It's kind of the same status, and we have Bluetooth as well as location services here all turned on, but I'm not currently seeing it. And just in case it was a weird bug for Android, I also tried it on an iPhone or iOS device, but I'm running into the same exact observation with location services, Bluetooth, all being activated. It still isn't being detected because, again, the ring itself is not technically turned on. So although that's a little disappointing and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, I'm holding off on just completely saying it doesn't work, just keeping in mind that the current status is not completely finished. So giving them a little benefit of the doubt here, but again, it's always a risk when it comes to integrated smaller tech items like this. Battery in general tends to be a pretty big point of failure I've actually found, regardless of if it's smart rings or even smartphones at times. Sometimes it refuses to charge and you may have to give it a bit of a push, so to speak, metaphorically, for it to work again, trickle charging, things like that. So it's funny how this one little component is so essential to the functionality of tech products. So definitely an area where hopefully additional QC, quality control, as well as more rigorous testing can be applied in the industry as a whole. Because regardless of how impressive the construction, the build here is, if there is some type of battery issue, then it kind of renders the entire operation much more difficult. The app itself, though, does seem to be relatively clean, and you're able to then gauge some of the metrics here, including a consolidated score on the top, which is out of 100 based on your daily readiness, using metrics like the number of steps you're taking, your activity status, the number of hours you've slept to give you a overall score of your health, blood oxygen or SpO2 data, and some of these cards can be hidden as well. And there's even a kind of stress monitoring aspect here as well that tells you how relaxed or maybe stressed you are, which is also based on some approximations using the SpO2 and the optical heart rate sensor, although this isn't the same thing as blood pressure, so just keep that in mind. So overall, pretty clean in terms of the layout, and you have separate tabs here dedicated for sleep management, providing some more insights on how you're sleeping, and also the expert consultation. This is the quote-unquote AI large language model aspect, but again requires you to connect to the ring, which we can't do on this particular unit, in order to pull up the kind of chat interface for asking questions. Looks like there's some general trivia related to sleep, but currently it's in Chinese. Hopefully that gets translated once the final production version is available. So again, some additional software enhancements, optimization I think is still needed to fully refine it, but you can see some more stages of sleep, light versus deep, REM sleep duration that's going to get tracked here as well, including naps automatically, as well as some sleep aid music that can be played back from the app here, things like nature sounds, as well as wind noises, water sounds to help you unwind, fall asleep a little more quickly, including some tabs here for meditation and decompression as well. Again, not our first time seeing some of the features here, including brainwave audio sounds, but still nice to see it consolidated in this one spot. The next tab over for sports also allows you to begin an exercise session from the app, including running, walking, cycling, and it will use connected GPS on your phone to track its location on a map, and then the actual sensors on the ring for tracking your heart rate, calories burned, distance walked, and then consolidating them together as far as the fitness tracking functionality is concerned. Finally, on the last tab, you're able to activate a selfie remote control function, so you can use the ring and tap on it to take a picture if your phone is a little bit further away on a tripod with a group of people, for example, which is a neat extra, changing units of measurement, your different targets or goals for number of steps you want to reach every day to see how much of your activity you've completed. So the layout looks quite clean, showing some insights and recommendations as well, which is nice to see. However, just a bit of a shame that we aren't able to test out the accuracy and performance just yet. Again, it's going to be critical for that to be resolved on the final version. And pricing wise, this one is currently sitting at around $200, which is right in line with all the other smart rings we've seen, from Ultrahuman, Ringcon, Amazfit smart ring, so on and so forth, are all about the same cost. So it isn't going to be the cheapest smart ring either, because again, they do have a larger battery, a more unique design here for the casing, crafted out of full alloy and metal. So the hardware itself does seem to be pretty nice looking. Again, it's just going to come down to software optimization, ensuring that some of these small quirks get ironed out on the final production unit for a smoother setup process. But that will be interesting to see, hopefully in our follow-up video. Again, I don't want to hark on them too much, but there's actually two other minor points I do have to flag that hopefully gets resolved. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, no pun intended, that this was just an isolated case. I actually ordered the size 8 ring. This one is the size 10, which is actually a little bit too large for me, especially if I'm using my index finger. It's actually a little bit too loose, and there's a greater risk of it just kind of popping off there. But again, hopefully this is just a inventory or shipping mix-up, providing replacements if needed. The second point, though, which is also a little bit strange, is maybe because of the recent tariffs that the US government imposed on packages, unfortunately, that just went into play recently. There might be some added confusion in international shipping currently that hopefully gets ironed out as the process becomes more familiar to people. Because I just point that out since right now on this particular unit, actually when receiving it, there was kind of a shock import duty that was notified by email here. It actually said that I owed $51 to DHL for the delivery fees because of the taxes and tariffs. So that's a pretty shockingly high number, actually. It's actually a fourth the cost of the actual product, and maybe even more than what shipping itself costs. But this is the consequence of some of those tariffs in action. But yeah, definitely something to watch out for. If I encounter this more in the future, I'll definitely keep you guys posted on how it goes, because in this trial run, at least now they're aware of some of these potential issues that can crop up, and perhaps they'll further integrate it into their solutions when it comes to shipping going forward, because the worst case scenario would be having a consumer have to foot the bill on that particular tariff, and that would be just a really bad experience, unless that's the new norm that we have to contend with, which is really unfortunate. I've already seen some listings on eBay, just as a side note, if you're ordering things internationally from Japan, some international phones, for example, and they'll say on the listing that it doesn't actually cover the tariffs anymore, and you would have to pay that. They're just paying for the normal shipping part. So again, these are some slightly troubling signs, but only time will tell how they get ironed out in the near future. So those are some of the aspects to be mindful of, ending on a little bit more of a pessimistic note, but I do want to be completely honest and transparent with you guys, as always. And obviously, it's impossible for a product to be 100% perfect, or in fact, for all the products to be positive. There has to be some cases where things don't always work out, and that's life as we know it. But yeah, despite the skepticism here, I still think that there is some positive attributes from the design as well as hardware I do really like. So hopefully they get their quirks there ironed out in time for the final production run version. But anyways, that's been just a first look JIYUAI smart ring.